Welcome to today's podcast. Today, I have a special guest. I'm really happy to having her. The topic of life motivation is part of my coaching portfolio for already a long time. Experience at my own personal coaching for Reiss motivation analysis had been a huge eye-opener for myself, and I applied directly for the master training afterwards. Now I'm proud to be part of his family and partner and exclusive license owner for it in India. Welcome, Maggi Reiss.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad and excited to having you today. You have already a long history looking on the Reiss Motivation Profile, and especially because of a name, because you are the brand of that name. So the company behind it is IDS Publishing Corporation. And if I looked it correctly, you are already president since 1988. Which is a long journey. So you studied, or you have a master in psychology as a background, and you're a licensed school psychologist with more than 25 years of experience, as well helping middle and high school students. And somewhere you met Stephen Reiss, your husband. How have you found him? What happened?
Well, he was working at Yale University towards his doctorate in psychology, and I was awarded a fellowship to do some research there one summer. And so we both were working in the same animal learning lab, and that's how I met him. A very unusual place to meet your future spouse, but he was working with rabbits and I was working with rats. And we were both doing animal learning experiments when we first met.
Cool. And Steve is the founder of the Reiss Motivation Profile. How has it come up as an idea? I think is he just sitting then in the laboratory thinking about what's motivating rabbits? So let's see how we can do it as a psychologist.
Well, Stephen actually had several research interests. He started in the field of anxiety disorders. He developed a test called the Anxiety Sensitivity Index, which predicts who's likely to experience an anxiety disorder, especially a panic attack. From there, he moved to the field of intellectual disabilities. And in particular, he was interested in what is known as dual diagnosis, which is people with intellectual disabilities who also have mental health issues. And then in 1995, he was diagnosed with a very serious autoimmune disorder. And he knew, and I knew, that it was likely to shorten his life. So at that point, he became interested in what made his life meaningful, what was important to him, what drove his behavior. When he got out of the hospital, he decided he was going to study the field of motivation and psychology. And when he did, he discovered that it wasn't a very scientific field because there was no standardized measure for assessing what motivates an individual. And that's what led Stephen to 7 years worth of research in developing the Reiss Motivation Profile. He wanted to advance human knowledge about what makes us tick.
How could I expect that is working such a study? Because the motivations are very widespread. And we know from Maslow, there are some which are from the earlier psychologists, we are still valid. Stephen added a lot of other motivational aspects.
Well, he used what we call an empirical approach. A lot of other people who have studied motivation or who have tried to develop tests of what motivates an individual use what we call an a priori approach, which means they, in their own minds, they think to themselves, okay, these are the X number of motives that I think are important to people. And then they write items to assess those motives. What Stephen did is start with items. He started with 500 different items of goals that people could be interested in, things that people want in their lives. And he did factor analytic studies to determine which of those items hung together in scales. And so he developed the Reiss Motivation Profile in a scientific way, starting with items and not starting with preconceived notions of what does motivate an individual. It's a very different approach. And that's why we say the Reiss Motivation Profile is the first standardized, comprehensive measure of what motivates an individual.
And then the worldwide rollout started.
Yes. Well, what happened is Stephen's intent in developing this test was to advance human knowledge. He did not do this for commercial reasons. He wanted to advance knowledge in the field of motivation, to give people a measure they could use to study motivation. And what happened was we began to be approached by business coaches and business consultants and sports coaches and school professionals saying, well, this is something we could use. And so at that point, we decided that we would make the test commercially available to the business world, the sports world, and the educational world.
And one of the earliest countries, as I remember, had been Germany, as
Yeah.
Markus Brandt had been already in my podcast, explaining a little bit about Reiss Motivation Profile. I think he is one of the earliest as well adapters of it and trainers who train coaches in Germany about Reiss Motivation Profile.
Yes. I think it was in the spring of 2006 is when we first met Marcus. He came to the United States along with some other individuals from Europe to learn about the Reiss Motivation Profile, the theory behind it, which is called the theory of 16 basic desires, and its different applications. Yeah, we've known Marcus for a long time.
Right. Do you have a favorite desire where you say you love it most?
Well, in my own profile, my strongest motive is family. In fact, Stephen told me once that when he was writing the items for the family motive, for the family basic desire, that he looked at my behavior and figured out what somebody with a very strong need for family would look like. So I guess I was the model for the items on the family scale. So that is my strongest motive. I'm very family oriented. I loved being a mother. I love being a grandmother. I spend as much time as I can with my children and my grandchildren, and I enjoy that very, very, very much. Much more than a lot of other people, I guess, according to my Reiss profile. Another strong motive for me is order. I'm very organized. I like to plan. I like to be prepared. I'm very detail oriented. So that's definitely a strong motive for me. And if you've read any of Stephen's books, you will discover that was not a strong motive for him. He had a very weak need for order. He valued flexibility and spontaneity. And sometimes that created some issues in our marriage, and we had to work that out. But we did. We did.
I remember as Stephen passed, unfortunately, away some years ago, and you had to sort the contracts and look for some of the contracts with our partners. You said it was a nightmare because the order system of Stephen was anything but logical.
Yes, well, I remember that he had the licensing agreement for Turkey in the file with our taxes. And as my nephew pointed out, well, they both begin with a T. So I guess that's what Stephen was thinking. But it was a little bit difficult for me to sort through his system of organization, which was not what I would have had.
And there are different flavors available or areas to use for Reiss Motivation Profile. We have a business version, there is a sport version, and there's a school version. Could you explain a little bit about what is the key difference? When to use what?
It's really the same test. The items are the same on the business, sports, and school versions. It's the same 128 items, and it's the same scoring formula that we use. What is different is the focus of the report. So for the RMP for business, the report talks about how the person's basic desires might play out in the world of work and how they might affect him on the job. In the sports, RMP for sports, the report focuses on how the athlete's motives might affect him or her in the world of sports and how they might get along with their teammates or have certain conflicts with coaches and how they can motivate themselves for peak performance, what's important to them. And of course, the Reiss School Motivation Profile, the report there talks about how the motives of the student might affect the student's academic achievement and school performance. And that's a really important focus, I think, because a lot of schools think that if a student isn't achieving up to his ability, that there has to be some kind of disability involved, when really there can be a motivational reason. So we have identified 6 possible motivational reasons for academic underachievement. In fact, Stephen actually wrote a paper about that.
And is there a difference from the age where you can start, or is there where you say that what is the minimum age you should have as an experience to start such an analysis? Just imagine for school, it's I love it to support the kids before they're starting to study, to get an orientation and understanding which are the motivational drivers to select maybe a better area where they fit in.
Well, the test is normed for ages 12 and up. So somebody as young as 12, which would in the United States would be a middle school student, can take the school version of the RMP. And it is important for students in high school, I think, to understand what their basic desires are, what's important to them in life, how they're going to to find values-based happiness, because when you choose a career, you don't want to just choose it based on what you're good at. You want to choose it based on also what is important to you and what will make you happy. So we believe that the RMP is very important for adolescents and young adults to help them identify the basic desires that they want to make sure that they're satisfying, and that will lead to the values-based happiness for them.
Perfect. If somebody says, that sounds interesting, I like to be a master, we call it a master, to use the Reiss Motivation Profile, are there specific requirements where you say which is a good fit to be prepared for? So like, should I be an educated coach or psychologist to do such an education?
Well, if you're a school professional, such as a school psychologist or a school counselor or a school social worker, you're automatically, because you're a licensed professional, qualified to purchase the school version of the RMP. If you are a business person or a sports coach, we require you to participate in certification training to learn about the test and learn how to use the test and learn how to interpret the test for your clients or your athletes. So we do offer certification training around the world. We have partners that are licensed to do that in certain countries. And for our unlicensed countries, IDS Publishing has licensed trainers that handle requests for certification training.
Great. Do you have some stories you like to share where you said that was a great experience using RMP in the school or in the sport or in the business version that you like to share where you say, wow, it was a very impressive factor that you experienced?
I think when I was a school psychologist, I was asked to give the RMP to a junior in high school who was trying to decide her direction in life. She was a very social individual. She had good math skills, but she had a very weak need for curiosity. She didn't really enjoy thinking. Her parents wanted her to go on to college, and they thought that she should become an accountant because she was very good in math. And that would make sense if her basic desires would be in line with being an accountant. Unfortunately, she had a very weak need for curiosity, and she didn't want to go to college. She didn't want to complete 4 years of college in order to become an accountant. Had a very strong need for social contact, and most accountants work alone. They're not working in teams and groups. They're not interacting with people on a regular basis. So that would not have been a good fit for her, both in terms of her weak need for curiosity and her strong need for social contact. So when I began talking with her, I discovered that she liked to do hair. She looked at hairstyles and tried to, fix her hair in accordance with the latest styles. And she often tried to do the same thing with some of her friends. So I began thinking about whether going to become a hairstylist might be a good fit for her. And when we looked at her basic desires, it actually was a good fit because she had a strong need for beauty. She had a strong need for social contact. If you work as a hairstylist, you're interacting with people all day long. She had a fairly strong need for physical activity, which you need because you'd be on your feet all day long. And she also had a strong need for family, and hairstylists can set their own schedules. And a lot of them, when they get married and have children, cut back on their hours and have limited schedules, but they can still work. So that also would have worked for her. So I'm very happy to say she decided to pursue becoming a hairstylist. She went to cosmetology school, which is only about a year and a half. So you don't have to do a lot of thinking, and it's more hands-on, which is consistent with somebody that has a weak need for curiosity. And she, to this day, is a very happy person being a hairdresser.
And I think that is one of the positive side effects of if you're working with your desires, you get a lot of strong positive impulses from your body back.
Yes, so she's very happy today. I still know this individual, and I've kept up with her, and I think she made a good career choice based not only on things that she was good at, but also on her basic desires and what was really meaningful for her.
That's great. Maggie, if you're looking on the future this year, next year, are there events, activities that you say, great, I can't wait to get there?
Well, I can't wait for the pandemic to end, so I can visit some of my extended family and my friends again, that's for sure. From the viewpoint of the RMP, I think that we're starting to engage in more research again, which I'm very excited about. Stephen was the main researcher in the family. I was the person who was applying the RMP in the school system, but I'm starting to get back into doing some research. We just did a study about the motives that characterize high achieving women, and that was a very interesting study. And now we are going to be doing some research on the motives that characterize successful leaders. So that is a main focus for this year.
Which is interesting, and I hope we can share it soon to our community. And yeah, and hopefully you will come to India and to support us a little bit on the schools, as that is some part what we are doing there. And hopefully we can reschedule it, as we missed it due to the pandemic for last year. And yeah, Maggi, I would say thank you very much for this first impression about Reiss Motivation Profile and how it had been developed with you and Stephen. I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully in India or with our next partner meeting soon as well this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.